It was 2012. I was a young sailor on a ship called the Silver Star. We were sailing through the deep waters near the Marshall Islands. One night, the air became strange. It was too still. No wind, no waves, just a heavy, thick fog that felt like a wet blanket over the ship. Around 4 a.m., the radio room went crazy. The Morse code wasn't a normal message. It was fast, messy, and frantic. I stood by the door and watched our radio man. His hands were shaking so hard he could barely hold his pen. He wrote down the words as they came in. All officers, including captain, are dead, lying in chart room and bridge, possibly whole crew dead. Then there was a long silence. We waited, holding our breath. Then one last stutter of code. I die. The captain's face went stone cold. Turn the ship, he ordered. Find them. We found the SS Orang Medan just as the sun began to rise. But the sun didn't look bright. It looked like a pale, sick eye in the sky. The ship was huge and rusty. It was just drifting, tilting side to side in the water. No flags were flying. No one was on the deck. I was chosen to be in the first boat to go across. As we rowed closer, I noticed something that made my skin crawl. The ocean is usually full of life, but here there were no fish, no birds. Even the seagulls stayed far away, circling in the distance as if they were afraid to touch the ship. I climbed the rope ladder first, and when I stepped onto the deck, a wave of heat hit me. It shouldn't have been hot. The morning was chilly, but the ship felt like an oven. And the smell, it didn't smell like the sea. It smelled like old pennies and burnt hair. I turned the corner, and that's when I saw him. A sailor was lying on the wooden deck. I ran to him, thinking he was hurt, but when I got close, I froze. He was stiff as a board. His arms were reaching up toward the sky, his fingers bent like claws. His teeth were bared, and his eyes, they were wide, bulging out of his head, staring straight into the sun. He wasn't just dead. He looked like he had been scared to death by something standing right over him. I looked down the long hallway of the deck. There were more, dozens of them. Every single man was in the same position. They weren't slumped over or lying flat. They were all arched back, clawing at the air, with their mouths open in a silent scream. It looked like a museum of nightmares.
"Don't look at their eyes," my friend whispered behind me. He was crying. "Look at their faces. They aren't looking at us. They're looking at something behind us." I forced myself to walk toward the bridge, the room where they steer the ship. The captain was there. He was slumped over the big wooden wheel. His dead eyes were fixed on the horizon, but his face was twisted in that same horrible mask of fear. In the radio room, I found the man who sent the message. He was sitting in his chair, his cold hands still touching the radio key. His jaw was hanging open so wide it looked broken. Whatever he saw in that room before he died, it made him want to scream until his heart stopped. Then, the dog. A small terrier was lying near the door. Even the dog was frozen. Its fur was standing up on its back, and its teeth were showing. It was growling at nothing. Suddenly, the air around us started to change. It felt heavy, like it was hard to pull into my lungs. I looked down at my feet and saw a thin blue-gray smoke seeping out from the cracks in the floor. It didn't smell like a normal fire. It smelled like chemicals and rot. A low humming sound started to vibrate through the floorboards. It felt like the whole ship was beginning to moan. "Get off!" the captain of our ship screamed from the water below. "Get off now! She's gonna blow!" We scrambled back to the railing. I was so terrified I almost fell into the black water. We jumped into our small boat and rowed as hard as we could. My muscles were screaming, but I didn't care. I just wanted to be away from that ship and those staring eyes. We were only a few hundred yards away when the Arong Maiden groaned one last time. A massive explosion ripped through the middle of the ship. A wall of fire shot into the sky. We watched, paralyzed, as the ship broke in half. Within minutes, the ocean swallowed it whole. It sank into the deep, dark water so fast it didn't even leave a ripple. No wood, no life jackets, nothing floated to the surface. It was as if the ship had never been there at all. When we got back to land, the government told us to be quiet. They told us the ship didn't exist in any records. They told us we probably just had sea fever and imagined it all. But I know what I saw. Every night when I close my eyes, I see those men. I see their clawed hands reaching for the sky. And I wonder, if we had stayed on that ship for just one more minute, would our faces have ended up looking like theirs? The ocean is very big, and it is very deep. And sometimes it keeps secrets that are never meant to be found.
Imagine walking into a room where the coffee is still steaming, the TV is still on, and a half-eaten breakfast is sitting on the table. Everything is perfect, except every single person is gone. No tracks, no struggle, just empty space. In 2014, I wasn't an influencer. I was a tech contractor for a coastal security firm. I was sent to a remote high-tech lighthouse station off the coast of Scotland to fix a GPS glitch. What I found on that rock didn't just make me quit my job, it made me afraid of the dark. The date was December 15th, 2014. I was dropped off by a supply boat. The crew, 3 guys named Thomas, James, and Leo, were supposed to meet me at the dock, but the dock was empty. The only sound was the freezing wind whistling through the iron railings. I walked up the concrete path to the main living quarters. I used my key card. Beep. The door unlocked. I stepped inside, expecting to hear the guys laughing or watching a movie. Silence. I walked into the kitchen. On the table were 3 bowls of oatmeal. One was half finished. A chair was pushed back so hard it had tipped over and was lying on its side. I touched the side of the bowl. It was still warm. My heart started to thud against my ribs. "Guys?" I called out. My voice echoed down the metal hallway. No one answered. I checked the sleeping quarters. All the beds were made, but then I saw the coat rack. In December, on a rock in the middle of the ocean, you do not go outside without a heavy jacket. It's a death sentence. 2 jackets were gone, but the third one, Leo's jacket, was still hanging on his hook. Why would a trained lighthouse keeper run out into the freezing cold in just a t-shirt? I ran up to the control room. I needed to see the digital logs. Maybe they had a medical emergency. I opened the last entry on the computer. It was time-stamped at 9 a.m. that morning. It was written by James. It said, 08:30 a.m. The storm is hitting us harder than anything I've seen in 20 years. The waves are reaching the top of the tower. Leo is crying. Thomas is praying. We are all trapped. I looked out the massive glass windows. The sky was blue. The ocean was as flat as a mirror. I checked the official weather satellite data on the monitor. There hadn't been a storm in that area for 3 days. According to that log, they were dying in a hurricane that did not exist. I felt a cold shiver crawl up my spine. I walked outside to the landing where the supply crates are kept. These are heavy iron crates bolted to the ground. I stopped, dead in my tracks. The iron railings, Rails as thick as my arm were twisted like they were made of wet noodles. A massive stone weighing over a ton had been ripped out of the ground and moved 50 feet up a set of stairs. There were no footprints, no blood, no signs of a fight. Just the smell of ozone in the air. The smell you get right before a massive lightning strike. I looked down at the water. It was black and deep. I felt like something was watching me from just beneath the surface. I didn't wait for the boat to come back. I used the emergency radio and begged them to send a helicopter. I sat on the floor of the kitchen, staring at that tipped-over chair, holding a kitchen knife until I heard the rotors overhead. The official police report said they were swept away by a freak wave. But waves don't make men see ghost storms. Waves don't make a man run outside without his coat while his friends cry in a corner. The search teams never found a single body, not a shoe, not a life vest, nothing. I don't go near the ocean anymore. Because I know that on that island in 2014, those 3 men didn't just drown. They stepped into a nightmare that wasn't on any map. And whatever they saw in that storm, it's still out there. Imagine you're standing on the deck of a ship. The sun is shining, the wind is calm, and the smell of fresh soup is wafting from the kitchen. You turn around to speak to your friend, but he's gone. You run to the bridge to find the captain, but the room is empty. You look at the ocean, and there are no boats. You are completely alone on a ship that is sailing itself. This is the story of the Carol A. Deering. But I'm not just reading from a history book. In 2010, I was part of a maritime salvage team working off the coast of North Carolina, right in the heart of the graveyard of the Atlantic. What we pulled up from the seabed that summer changed everything I thought I knew about this case. The year was 1921, but for me, the story started in the archives in 2010. The Carol A. Deering was a massive 5-masted schooner. It was a beautiful white ghost of the sea. On a cold January morning, a lighthouse keeper at Cape Hatteras spotted the ship through his binoculars. He noticed something wrong immediately. The ship was headed straight for the Diamond Shoals, deadly underwater sandbars that can rip a ship's hull open like a tin can. As the ship drifted closer, a man with red hair climbed onto the railing. He didn't wave for help. He didn't look happy. He picked up a megaphone and shouted to the shore. His voice was thin and high-pitched, trembling with a fear that the lighthouse keeper said chilled his very soul. He yelled that the ship had lost its anchors in a storm. But here's the thing. There had been no storm. The weather had been clear for days. Before the keeper could ask more, the man with the red hair vanished back inside, and the ship drifted into a thick, unnatural fog. Because of the rough surf, it took 5 days for the Coast Guard to actually get a boarding party onto the ship. In 2010, I stood on the exact spot where they landed. When they climbed over the side, they expected to find a crime scene. They expected blood, or at least signs of a struggle. Instead, they found nothing. The ship was perfectly upright. The sails were set. I want you to picture the silence of that deck. No footsteps, no voices, just the creaking of the wood and the flapping of the canvas in the wind. I walked into the galley, the ship's kitchen. This is the detail that still gives me nightmares. On the stove, the pots were still full of food. There was beef rib and pea soup. The table was set for the entire crew. Some of the plates had food on them, with forks resting on the side, as if the men had just sat down to eat and then stood up and walked into the ocean. I checked the captain's cabin. His bed was made. His spare boots were tucked neatly under the frame.
but his navigation equipment and the ship's logbook were gone. Now, listen to me. A captain never leaves his ship without his logbook, but a sailor never leaves his ship without his boots. Every single trunk was full of clothes and personal items. These men didn't pack, they didn't prepare, they just ceased to exist. During my 2010 expedition, we used side-scan sonar to look at the wreck site. We found the remains of the Deering buried deep under the sand, but our equipment started doing something I've never seen. The GPS began jumping miles across the map in seconds. The underwater cameras picked up a strange bluish glow coming from the sand, the same ozone smell the original boarding party reported in 1921. We found the ship's wheel. It wasn't just left alone, it had been lashed, tied down with heavy rope to keep the ship sailing in a perfectly straight line toward the shoals. This wasn't an accident. Someone wanted this ship to keep moving after the crew was gone. But where did they go? The lifeboats were missing, yes, but the Atlantic was crawling with ships that day. If 10 men had gotten into lifeboats in broad daylight, someone would have seen them. No one did. No life jackets ever washed up, no debris, no bodies. It was as if the sea had opened its mouth and swallowed the people, but spit the ship back out. There are theories, of course. Some say it was pirates, some say it was a mutiny. But why would pirates leave all the money in the food? Why would mutineers tie the wheel and jump into the shark-infested waters of the Outer Banks? In the 2010 files, I found a report from a nearby steamer ship that was in the area the same night. They reported seeing bright, silent lights hovering over the water near the Deering's last known position. They said the lights were so bright it felt like daytime for 3 minutes. Then the lights shot into the clouds, and the Deering was left in the dark. To this day, the case of the Carroll A. Deering is the only ghost ship mystery the U.S. government officially investigated as a high-level mystery. The FBI file is hundreds of pages long, and it ends with one word: unsolved. Next time you're standing on the coast and you see a light far out on the horizon that looks just a little too bright, or a ship with 5 masts moving silently through the fog, don't wave, don't call out. Just walk away, because some ships aren't looking for a harbor, they're looking for a new crew.